Assalamu alaikum. Hey guys, today I want to talk about the economy and modern relationships. Now, as you might know, human beings need food, clothes, and shelter. Okay, there's no secret there, right? And they need these things when they enter relationships because relationships are human relations. So, of course, human beings in relationships still need food, clothes, and shelter. And historically, these things are said to be provided for by men. So, men were historically the providers of these things when they entered a relationship, a marriage, right? And so this is kind of what it looked like. I drew a little picture, okay? This is kind of what it looked like. So men were the providers from the beginning of time until about the 1920s, okay? As you can see here. And if the economy, okay, why is this upside down? No, it's not upside down, it just looks that way. Okay, so if the economy brought in or the market value, okay, of the economy was $100, men took 90% of it, okay, because they did most of the work. They were always women who participated in economic affairs, not that much. And so let's say they got paid 10% of the share in the economy, okay? But since men were the providers, they kept about 10% of the wealth for themselves as personal wealth and spent 80% of their wealth on their women and then their children. So that collectively, and so women got 90%, okay, 10% which they collectively procured by themselves, and then 90% is what they got. So this is the traditional system, okay? This is what you might say is the traditional system. And this is what depicted society for a very long time, okay? Now the problem arises, or the challenge, let's call it a challenge, let's not call it a problem. In the following illustration I drew, okay, where we said that the first one was unfair. Why should men procure 90% of the market, okay, when they make up roughly 50% of the population? Okay, so we decided that through measures, government measures, we needed to implement reforms, economic reforms, to empower women, okay, so that they can compete on an equal footing with men. And so henceforth, through economic empowerment reforms, women earn 50% and men earn 50%. Ideally, that's the world we're working towards. In many places, women in fact earn more than 50% collectively, at least if you look at men excluding the top wealthiest men, of course, right? Because that obviously skews it in favor of men more so, okay, when you take those handful of very wealthy men into account. So if we exclude them, then women often do earn more than 50% of the share, right? So what differs now? Men are still traditionally expected to be providers, right? So that remains the same, but they earn 50% of the share, right? So 40% of their wealth would go towards women and children still, okay? And they would retain 10% if they are lucky, okay? And women would get 90% still from men, so they would still get 90% of the economy, okay? And then they would have been single, okay? Because they don't need to be married anymore, okay? So too men are generally now single also. and then women would be supported through the tax money, which also comes from men by and large, as some of the highest earners tend to be men, right? So more tax there from men, and then government sort of welfare and so on, right? A lot of it would go towards women who are then single mothers, okay? No husbands, so they are single mothers, right? So this is what it looks like, post 1960, let's say, until now, right? So what is the difference, okay? What is the difference between these two scenarios? The difference is the role that women play. That is by and large the difference, okay? So whereas historically women played the role of caregivers and wives, okay, now women play the role of being part of fulfilling 50% of the economic roles in society. Not the core roles. You don't by and large find women in construction, in building, in mining, and all those fundamental roles to the economy. They tend to choose the safer jobs, right? I see something sort of crawling around in the corner of my eye. Right, let's continue. I've had to relocate to another room because of the mouse problem in the other room. I've reluctantly set down a mouse trap, a non-poisonous mouse trap, because mice can be quite bad for the household. They chew wires and things like that. They could cause a electrical short and things like that. So I reluctantly set down a mouse trap to get rid of the mouse. Where I live is like in a desert location, and the mice seem to be rampant here. Even when I go out at night for my run, as I'm running along the park, I see quite a few mice running around. That's around the corner from my new location. So I'm thinking that I'm probably going to have a mouse problem. Even if I get rid of this one, hopefully it's only one, I think there's probably going to be a mouse problem in this house. Anyway, fortunately it's a relatively big house, so I've moved to the other majalis, the other sitting room, to complete this video. The sound is not so awesome in here because there's an echo. This is a wooden floor, whereas the other one is all carpeted. This is the sitting room for the inhabitants of the house, and the other one in front is for the guests. And the guys usually sit on the floor in Saudi culture. Anyway, let us continue, and let's talk about women now earning more money and also being financial contributors, both to their own lives, meaning they can maintain themselves, and the economy. And while this is a good thing in many regards, at least economically, because it increases the pool of labor. So let me explain this quickly, okay, very briefly. So while only men worked in the past, or the majority, 90% of workers were men, that too also because a lot of the jobs were physical, manual labor, and men being physically stronger were just generally better suited for those types of jobs. Okay, the jobs of the new age, office jobs and soft skills, is kind of more a demand of greater administration, needing greater administration for more sort of soft skills. So anyway, with the onset of this new era, obviously men do not in general have as much wealth as they might have procured in the past, because they don't claim the bulk of the market anymore financially. So they don't have as much money to spend on women and children, okay? However, by and large, women still generally have the expectation that men should be providers, that a good man is a man who can provide and provide for her, okay, be able to look after her. But that's no longer how the market works, you see, because the supply of goods and services are not unlimited in any economy, and the amount of participants in the activity of the procurement of this in exchange for a wage, that's also limited. So hence, when 50% of the population, i.e. men, work the jobs, that means there were more jobs available for fewer people. Now, when there's more jobs available for fewer people, that means the labor gets paid more, because the job market or the people offering jobs have to compete to try to procure a limited supply of workers, a diminishing supply of workers, i.e. the men, okay? When a woman flooded the job market, obviously, so that creates a surplus of labor. A surplus of labor means that employers now have a surplus of workers, and they therefore can pay less. Okay, they pay less. They can pay each worker less, or they can get double the labor for the same money, basically, because the money, the market value stays the same. The resources are the same. Okay, the jobs that need to be worked are the same. So anyway, that means that while the man might have got 90, let's say on average you got 90 out of 100, whatever currency we want to use, say $90, okay? Now, between himself and the excess labor, he would now have to settle for much less. He can no longer demand 90, when women flooding the job market would happily work that job for $40, $45, the same job. Why? They would do that because they were not financially liable in general, and their money was seen, at least by them, as an additional household income. Okay, and that being the case, then they didn't need money, or they didn't need as much money as a man would traditionally require, because they were not the breadwinners, or they earned an auxiliary income. Right, so where does that leave us, basically? So what it leaves us with is a shift in the economy, okay? Men no longer earn as much as they used to, okay, in traditional societies where women traditionally didn't work, where they stayed home and had kids, okay? And therefore, it is unreasonable for society to still demand that men by and large be the sole breadwinners, because the economy has shifted. Okay, the economy has shifted. So yes, while women still essentially by and large procure the same resources they did in the past, they do it via different means. So women now procure resources by being out in the job market and working. Whereas before, women procured those same resources by being at home and raising children. So just the job function has changed by and large, but the resources have remained the same. Okay, where did that resources come from? It came from the decrease of the wages that men used to procure. And so that's really all that happened. Okay. Hence, it is now harder for people to run a traditional family. Okay? Even those women who want to stay at home and have children and be looked after by a man cannot, number one, find a man who is able to afford that, by and large. And number two, if they are already in a married relationship, chances are 9 times out of 10 that they now need to work alongside their husband to provide for the family, and because they need to fulfill the function of working, they cannot have children, or they can have one child that goes to daycare, right? Because there's no one to look after it. So a good business to start would be a daycare business, like a nursery school, these kinds of businesses, because you need a parent. So you can basically sell parenting services to working couples, if they want to have children. So that's something to look into. So anyway, the point is, guys, the point of the whole discussion is that one thing gives way to another, okay? You can't have it both ways. You can't want to have a traditional family in a non-traditional society, because it doesn't work, okay? You can certainly try, and you can possibly succeed by scraping through, okay? You're gonna suffer severe setbacks, right? Unless, of course, you marry, as a woman, you marry an incredibly successful man who's financially quite well off, which obviously is very hard to find. It's a diminishing, there's a diminishing number of men who are very wealthy, okay? That group of men tend to be very, very wealthy, but that number is very low. So everyone can't marry them, right? Or maybe they can, who knows, right? If each one of those men were to have very, very many wives. But that would not be a fulfilling relationship. There's a point at which having too many wives becomes unfeasible, even if a man were to have enough money to maintain several wives. He still needs to be able to have a relationship with each wife. And where will he find the time? So there's that also. So anyway, think about it and let me know what you think. Like, subscribe, share, and I'd like to hear what your suggestions are in this regard. I personally believe that we need to be pragmatic, since we are in a modern society where this is the scenario. Both men and women have to work together as breadwinners, and probably outsource the role of parent to women and men who are less equipped to hold down a good job, which is kind of where the society is heading, where many societies have headed. So basically what you have then is, you have a man working and a woman working, you have a nanny and a driver, essentially. So the nanny looks after the children, so she's like the mother, and the driver takes them wherever they need to be, so he's like the other father, and then the two parents focus on their careers and their work life. And so basically it's like surrogate parents, essentially. So that's kind of where society is heading, in a way, where the only people that get to actually be parents are the poorer people who work for the richer people in their homes. Yeah, that does happen also. So yeah, think about it.